We were just kids with visions and hearts that go inside. Climb aboard our ship, we're going whether or not that you like. Whether or not that you like.
On a humid summer day in Atlanta, Georgia, Lee Everett sits shackled in the back of a police car, the weight of his recent conviction heavy on his mind. He's been charged with murder, a senator, caught in a scandalous affair with Lee's wife. The prospect of years behind bars looms heavy and final as the car cruises down the empty highway. The silence inside the vehicle is broken only by the officer's awkward attempts at small talk. Lee, lost in his thoughts, is hardly interested, merely enduring the man's chatter. Over the radio, faint voices crackle, mentioning a 1091E, code for an animal attack. The police scanner buzzes with increasingly frantic codes, reports of serious injuries, trauma cases multiplying by the minute. Squad cars blur past, heading urgently into the city, but the officer dismisses it all. Suddenly, a figure stumbles into their path. The officer, distracted, swerves too late, colliding head-on. When Lee regains consciousness, he's alone in the wreck. The officer's lifeless form sprawled just beyond the broken windshield. Dazed and injured, Lee crawls through a shattered window and reaches the officer's body, only for the corpse to jump back to life. Lee scrambles, fumbling with the officer's shotgun, and just in time, fires.
Don't make me do this!
The blast echoes through the quiet woods, shattering the stillness and drawing the attention of both the dead and a young girl nearby. Barely managing to evade the approaching walkers, Lee hobbles towards a nearby house, vaulting over a fence with what little strength he has left. Inside, he searches frantically, hoping to find supplies or survivors. His eyes settle on a family answering machine, its lights blinking. Playing back the recorded messages, he listens to the desperate voices of parents.
Hey, Sandra, this is Diana. We're still in Savannah. Ed had a little incident with some crazy guy near the hotel, so we had to get him back to the ER and have it checked out. Anyway, he's not feeling well enough to drive back tonight, so we're staying an extra day. Thanks so much for looking after Clementine, and I promise we'll be back in time before your spring break.
Message 3, left at 6:51 a.m.
Clementine, baby. If you can hear this, call the police. That's 911. We love you. We love you. We love you.
Learning the little girl's name, Clementine, and realizing she was left under the care of a babysitter. The silence is broken as a static crackle comes from the walkie-talkie nearby. A faint, trembling voice, Clementine's, breaks through, and Lee, despite the surreal chaos around him, speaks gently, assuring her of his good intentions, trying to establish a fragile connection. Clementine reveals she's been hiding in her treehouse alone, but before they can say any more, Sandra, her babysitter, lurches from the shadows, lunging at Lee. They struggle, a chaotic clash of survival instincts and desperation, until Clementine bravely steps in to help, allowing Lee to deliver the final fatal blow to Sandra. As Sandra's body falls, Clementine's eyes widen, a mix of horror and innocence shattered. She trembles, asking if it's dead, her voice quivering with confusion and fear. Lee, seeing the shock in her young eyes, gently explains, sensing this may be her first glimpse into this grim, altered world. Lee recognizes her distress, reassures her, gathering the frightened girl close. Clementine has been alone, surviving, waiting in the shadow of unknowing terror, and Lee's presence becomes her first hint of safety. This moment of fragile calm is soon interrupted by a choice he must make, whether to leave immediately with the girl or to wait for the cover of night. As the camera zooms in, it doesn't show Lee's face, it shows Clementine's. This decision, like so many that will follow, isn't about Lee, it's about Clementine. Lee, though he may not realize it yet, has become her protector, her guardian. From here on out, every choice, every sacrifice will be about keeping Clementine safe in a world gone dead. Lee Everett is a fascinating character, a blank slate. When we first step into his shoes, we only know 3 things. He's a convicted murderer, his parents owned a pharmacy, and now he's responsible for the life of an innocent child. As players, it's up to us to guide Lee from his troubled past towards becoming the hero we want him to be. Every decision, no matter how small, carries the weight of shaping his influence on Clementine. Early on, when survivors question Lee, he calls himself just some guy.
Safer there.
I'm not a dad. I'm just some guy.
Some guy?
Yeah.
It's one of my favourite lines because at this point, that's exactly what he is. From here, he begins his journey with Clementine. Soon, they encounter Kenny and his family, a mirror image of what Lee could become. Like Lee, Kenny is simply just some guy protecting his family, yet their paths diverge dramatically, a reminder of how easily Lee's story could have taken a darker turn. I'll dive deeper into this contrast in the next chapter. Although the game has hundreds of choices, it can actually be broken down into 2 main scenarios: Clementine present and Clementine not present. The game does an excellent job of making us look inward through Clementine's innocent gaze. We often act differently around her, shielding her from the darkness of our choices. Some choices highlight this bias directly. For example, at the farm, we're tested early on in how we view Clementine's innocence. A simple prompt asks whether to swear in front of her or use a softer word.
Manure.
Manure? Like when a horse plops?
Just like that.
This choice, seemingly minor, actually gets brought up against you later if you choose to swear. It's a subtle shock to players who thought it was unimportant. A tougher decision comes when you must choose to save Duck or Herschel's son, the same boy you assured you were just some guy. This is the first time Clementine will witness a living human being die, a reminder that no matter how hard you try, she's bound to see awful things. There are many powerful choices. In my personal favourite episode, episode 2, Starved for Help, when we discover the St. John family are cannibals who dismembered Mark and try to feed his legs to the group. When a scuffle traps you in a meat locker, a hostile character, Larry, suffers a heart attack. Kenny argues that Larry, likely dead, must be prevented from turning. Do you assist Kenny in a brutal choice to protect the group, or do you exhaust every option to save Larry, risking everyone else? Clementine is present during this choice, heightening its weight. But the next decision, in my opinion, is one of the game's greatest moments. After escaping the meat locker, you confront Danny, one of the cannibal brothers, and face the choice to kill or spare him. Danny is evil, a killer, and a cannibal who shows no remorse. Clementine isn't present for this choice. Or so you think. The game uses this moment to expose our true nature. If you choose to kill Danny with a pitchfork to the heart, you discover that Clementine actually saw you do it. It's a phenomenal twist, forcing you to confront whether, without her presence, you would have become a monster yourself. The same choice is given for the other brother, where you can choose to go back and finish him off, or leave him. Clementine will see you do both.
Get back here and finish this, Lee! Get back here and fight me like a man, Lee! Lee!
Still in episode 2, we face the decision to steal from an abandoned car. Starving survivors and no owner in sight make the choice practical, but Clementine's moral compass is at stake. Do you prioritize the group's survival at the risk of harming others, or let the supplies be, staying true to Clementine's values? In my opinion, episode 2 is the ultimate test of morality. Are you a different person when Clementine is around? Do you teach her selfish ruthlessness, or instill in her the values of a lost world? Though, don't mistake me for thinking your morals only get put to the test in episode 2. Episodes 3 and 4 present arguably harsher, more complex decisions that force you to confront your view on human life. In episode 3, you face a tough dilemma. In a scenario where Clementine isn't present, would you let a woman suffer a slow, agonizing death to buy yourself more time to scavenge supplies? And later with Lily, after she murders a group member in a fit of paranoia, do you abandon her to an uncertain and likely grim fate? These choices differ from those with the St. John's. You're not ending life directly, but leaving it to a potentially crueler end. Then there's episode 4, which delivers one of the most agonizing moral tests involving Ben, a stupid teenager who's caused irreparable harm. From making a secret deal with bandits that gets Duck and Katja killed, to abandoning Clementine in a moment of danger, Ben's mistakes pile up. The tension comes to a head when you're forced to decide whether to let him fall to his death or pull him up and offer him a chance at redemption. Do you condemn a reckless but young and well-meaning kid for his mistakes, or do you find it in yourself to forgive and believe in his potential to change? Lee may be just some guy, but his journey is a reflection of our own moral code. Every choice reveals how far we're willing to suppress our inner darkness for Clementine's sake. In a world without laws, it's her presence that keeps us grounded, stopping us from becoming like the monsters around us. However, what Lee and the player both don't know is that every decision has been fuel against you for an unknown stranger with a vendetta, one who seeks to take Clementine away from you. That stranger is no other than the owner of the car you could have stolen from in episode 2. Before we talk about the stranger, I'd like to go over the Mirror Kenny theory first, as I believe it's extremely important as a contrast to the stranger's morals and meaning. Firstly, let me quickly explain the theory. The Mirror Kenny theory suggests that Kenny's decisions and actions serve as a reflection of what Lee might become if he let his role as protector override his morality. Kenny and Lee both carry the responsibility of shielding their loved ones from the horrors of this world, but Kenny's choices, often ruthless and morally ambiguous, reflect a path Lee could easily take if not careful. Kenny is willing to make ruthless decisions in private if it means keeping his family safe, and also often out of the loop, even shielding Duck from the darker side of survival. At Herschel's farm, Kenny's actions reveal this impulse. He saves Duck and flees, rather than exposing his son to the violence that unfolds, leading to Sean's death. Even killing Larry in the locker room is something he might never have done had Duck been watching. Kenny's need to protect Duck's innocence drives him to darker choices, yet it also distances him from reality. When Duck is bitten, Kenny's emotional state shatters, highlighting the fragile mirror between him and Lee. Lee's immediate reaction is to imagine Clementine as a walker, underscoring the fear of losing her. After Duck's death, Kenny becomes a hollow shell of the father he once was, consumed by anger and sorrow, a clear picture of what Lee himself might become if he loses Clementine. This is where Chuck's advice to Lee comes into play. When Chuck blatantly tells Clementine she'll die if unprepared after witnessing Duck's death and Kenny's undoing, it forces Lee to realize that while protecting Clementine's innocence is important, it's also essential to prepare her for the world she faces. Unlike Kenny, Lee cannot shy away from the hard truths. He takes the responsibility of teaching Clementine how to use a gun and advising her to keep her hair short. These choices carry heavy implications, pushing Lee to question his own values and hope he's imparted the right morals. The game asks, would Clementine know when to defend herself, when to show mercy? Characters like Duck and the screaming girl at the pharmacy challenge us to consider the weight of every decision Lee makes in shaping her understanding of right and wrong. Now that we've explored the Mirror Kenny theory, let's turn to the Stranger. The Stranger, as you'll remember, is the man who owned the abandoned car in episode 2. If you choose to take the supplies from the car, it's his first reason to pursue Lee and Clementine. But regardless of whether you steal from him, it's actually Lee's choices throughout the journey that ultimately convinced the Stranger that Lee is a danger to Clementine. This is where the contrast between Kenny and Lee makes the Mirror Kenny theory so crucial. While Kenny avoids many tough decisions, it's Lee's hard choices that become evidence against him in the Stranger's eyes. Every morally ambiguous decision Lee makes, and every mistake along the way, becomes fuel for the Stranger's belief that Lee is unfit to protect Clementine. Through her conversations on the radio, Clementine unknowingly shares these details with the Stranger, recounting events she's seen but might not fully understand. The Stranger questions Lee's choices, stealing supplies, abandoning or killing others, exposing Clementine to violence, endangering her life, and, of course, Lee's past as a convicted killer. This moment forces Lee to reflect. Has he been a worthy protector? Has he become monstrous enough that the Stranger's judgment is valid? The Stranger may be clearly deranged, but it's Lee's impact on Clementine that determines whether the Stranger's accusations feel delusional or, in some ways, justified. Kenny, on one hand, arguably doesn't act enough, while Lee, depending on your choices, may act too often and too ruthlessly. Lee can cross lines, becoming hard-hearted and even as ruthless as the villains he fights. After all, if your Lee allowed a young teenager to fall to his death, how different is he from Season 2's villain Carver, who also pushes people to their death from roofs over mistakes? After a brief skirmish with the Stranger, either you kill the Stranger or Clementine will shoot and kill him to protect Lee, marking the moment that Clementine's innocence may have been permanently shattered. Ultimately, this journey reflects a core truth. Innocence is precious and worth protecting, yet the more we overextend ourselves to preserve it, the more we risk unintended harm. Too much innocence in this world can be fatal, as it was for Duck. In trying to protect innocence, we can lose sight of the line between protection and harm, forcing those closest to us to seek outlets, like Clementine's radio connection, to process what they can't say to us directly. So after all of this, is the value of innocence in a world gone dead completely redundant? Does Duck's death warn Lee that Clementine must abandon her childhood to survive? In a way, yes, but also no. Witnessing horrors and learning to protect oneself doesn't have to mean losing the essence of being a child. Shielding Clementine from everything might leave her unprepared and vulnerable. Chuck was absolutely right about this, but immersing her in unnecessary violence or a vengeful mindset risks turning her reckless and detached, much like Jane in Season 2. If the future of the world has any hope, it lies in preserving the love and compassion tied to innocence, while ensuring children like Clementine are equipped to face the dangers around them. Striking this delicate balance, Lee, who is both empathetic and resolute, gives Clementine her best shot at survival. It's about saving others when you can, but not at the expense of losing yourself or risking your life needlessly. It's about giving well-meaning people a chance to redeem themselves while also recognizing when others may be trying to manipulate you. Without Clementine's innocence, Lee could have completely lost himself, becoming a stone-hearted murderer with no reason to live. Throughout the game, there are countless opportunities for Lee to spiral into this darkness. Killing an unarmed and incapacitated Danny St. John is just one example, but no matter the choice you make in moments like these, Clementine's reaction always forces you to pause and reflect on your actions. This is the true value of innocence. Whether it resides within you or someone close to you, it acts as a compass, preventing actions that could harm those around you. Innocence keeps you grounded, reminding you of the differences between right and wrong. Most importantly, it reassures you that kind hearts still exist, hearts worth protecting, worth living for.
I'll miss you.
Me too.